everyone. Welcome to It's Beauty Binge. We are so excited for our EP today. We have a dear, dear friend of mine on the show, and her story is absolutely incredible, as well as inspiring and life-changing. So I'm so grateful that you agreed to come on and be vulnerable and share some really, really special things with all of you. So this is Mandy Romero. Say hello.
Hello.
So she is incredible. I actually had to write down a list of things because she does so many. So Mandy, I'm bringing up my phone, okay, because I don't want to mess up. She owns Soul Vibes Clothing, and on there she offers her jewelry, which we're going to talk about, astrology charts, as well as some inspirational clothing. She also works in finance for Cisco, correct?
Yes.
And has for how many years?
16
years, yes. And then she also teaches yoga at Recoup. So we are going to have all of these things listed below that you can see at the end of our show today. So, Mandy, welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me. We're going to actually start fast forward and then reverse back. Okay, so Mandy and I met on a retreat in Peru. Yes?
Yes.
At how long ago?
It's been less than a year.
Yeah, it has.
I think it was like end of August, early September.
Yeah, it was last August.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which
So
feels like it's been a really long time.
I know, right?
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're coming up, I guess, on a year.
Yeah.
And this was a plant-based journey retreat that we went on. And if any of you are in that space, you know like how deeply you connect.
Yeah.
After going through certain things together. So, and we are going to touch a little more in depth about some of the things we experienced together. So we're excited. So Mandy, tell us from the beginning, like your story.
I have such a long story. I would say, so in the beginning, I got breast implants back in 2008, and I was having some issues with scar tissue that was coming around the implants. So with having that, I also had my third son at the end of 2008, and I was having issues with the scar tissue then, and I ended up getting mastitis during that time. And I didn't know I had it. So I guess I had had it for an entire year and I had no idea. And so I ended up having to have an emergency explant to get everything taken out because I had a severe infection. I was in the hospital for a couple of days. They took everything out. They scraped it all out. And it took me 2 years. I felt like I looked like a boy for 2 years because I had nothing. And then I decided that I would go back and do it again. After 2 years, I got brave because I got tired of the way it looked. So I went back, did it again, and the scar tissue started coming back again. And fast forward to when I moved here to Utah, I went and saw another doctor here, had them redone for a third time, and I was good. And then the scar tissue again started coming back again very aggressively. So
do they know what caused just all of these reactions, the scar tissue, or is it just your body with implants?
They don't know. So initially the thought of one of my doctors was that the doctor that put them in previously gave me way too big of a size. So he overstretched the skin and caused, a lot of, they were huge. They were like a size double D. So they were really big. So, and I had those for quite a long time, and then I had a kid, and then all the things, and then the infection. So some of the doctors had told me that anytime you have an infection, that causes a lot of scar tissue as well.
Okay.
So,
and what was, if I can ask, what was the first symptom that you started experience? Because you said you had the infection, but you didn't know that you had it. So what was the first thing that you noticed that
it was tight? Well, I knew that there was something going on because it was the boob was tightening, and then it was starting to tuck. The nipple was starting to tuck under.
Visually, you
could see it, but I didn't know that it was infected. I knew that was there.
Okay.
I was actually out on a run with a girlfriend, and I'm like running, and I got flushed and I got really hot and I'm like, what is wrong with me? And I went home and I had a really high fever and like, that's what triggered me to, obviously I had to go do something and my breast was incredibly red. Like it was super red. So when I got to the doctor, he looked at it and was like, if we don't take that out now, you're going to have an implant on your chest when you wake up in the morning because it's trying to push itself out.
Your body's trying to
get rid of it. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Okay.
So fast forward to then moving to Utah and doing all that. And the capsulation started coming back again because I had to have surgery again because I had the capsulectomy. So I had another one in California and then I came out here and I had to have another one because of scar tissue and we're just trying to get it under control. Yeah. They tried several different implant styles, several different textures, shapes, like you name it, right? Yeah. And the issue was I couldn't go without anything now because of the scar tissue being so aggressive, it was pulling into my chest cavity. So it would basically tuck my whole breast into my chest because it was so aggressive.
Oh,
okay, so that was what was happening, and then I also, on top of that, because of over the years, I mentioned that I had done a few Ironmans, so I'd really put my body under a lot of stress. I had a hernia from just pushing too hard, and so I was dealing with all of those things at the same time, but I really wasn't addressing any of it. I was just like letting it go, right?
Yeah. Like a lot of people do.
Yeah. And it's like until it was an emergency, I'm like, it's fine. Right.
And when we get busy too, it's like, it's fine. It'll be okay.
It'll be okay. Yeah, I don't want to deal with it. It's like going to the dentist.
Probably don't do that.
No, exactly.
Don't ignore the signs.
Let's not ignore signs when our body is speaking to us.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay, so
that's very much true. But then we can go into going to Peru, right? And the whole experience there. So,
so you were still trying to get your breast under control when we went to Peru?
It was in the phase of, I was starting to capsulize again. So I was like,
And this is the third time.
This is the third time.
Okay.
And so I was like, maybe I'm good. And I had already made an appointment with a doctor. So I went to my regular plastic surgeon and he was like, nah, I can't help you. You're out of my scope now. He's like, you have to go to a reconstructive surgeon because this is getting to be crazy. So I made an appointment with a guy at the U before we even went to Peru, but he was like 4 or 5 months out. So I was in the waiting process of going to see him before we left.
Then we go to Peru.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So now we're in Peru having these magical experiences together.
Yeah. And not knowing anyone. I went to Peru. I knew not a soul in our group. Like no
that's
one.
Right.
Yeah.
You just signed up and just are like, I'm going.
Yeah, exactly.
And me, I knew, our friend that facilitated it. And then I had a couple other girlfriends going.
Yeah.
So I at least knew people, but we connected
right away.
Yeah. Right. Similar personalities. We connected right away. And then journeying together.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Going through all of the things was amazing, right?
And holding space for each other
exactly.
and being able to be like, are you dying? Yes, I'm dying. Are you dying? Yes, I'm dying. Okay, good. And then don't ever go on a hike with Heather, man. You will chase her up the hill the entire time. She is like,
okay, I have to ask a question. Why are you dying? Like you literally felt like you were gonna die?
No, well, sometimes.
Doing rape.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Which is hape, but it's like,
what is
they call it hape here in the US, but they call it rape. So it is, it's tobacco, right? And they take large amounts of tobacco and then they
smoke it like a peace sign?
No,
what do you do?
blow it up. They blow it up your nostrils, right? So it's supposed to be cleansing for the body and calming and releasing of all of negative energies and grounding, right? So it's really good for those things.
Okay.
But I got served a lot of it, and I don't do it very often. Yeah. So that's where we were like, I might be dying now. I'm
like a little too much.
You did 3 rounds.
Yes.
I did 2 rounds.
Okay.
Yeah.
She went for a third.
Okay.
Yeah. So why?
She's more your life than me.
More.
No,
well, I
she's
decided when I was
incredible.
going that I would be all in on everything.
Yeah.
And mind you, like I'm in a room of strangers. Like I've literally have just met these people, right?
Yeah.
But to be honest, like when you're going into a plant medicine journey or anything like that, sometimes it's better not to have association because you don't feel into the other people's energies. You don't know what I'm working through. I don't know what you're working through.
Yeah.
And it really, quite honestly, doesn't matter because you're the one that's working through it. I only have to sit there and console you
yourself.
and we can talk about it, but I don't take ownership of that because you're not connected to me
Right.
outside of this, right? And then what happens is you become connected outside of this, and now it's like, I don't know. Now it's like, okay, how are you going to do that again? I don't know. Yeah,
I know, right?
So,
Maybe not.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay. So getting on point. So I want to fast forward. It was our second to last day.
I think it was, well, no, because we went to
So
Machu Picchu, remember? So I think it was like the third to the last day, right?
Yeah, the third to the last day. So we had already done multiple days of different types of journeys up to this point.
Yeah.
So only 3 of us
Out of like 15.
out of 15 chose to go with the indigenous people in the middle of nowhere and do one last journey together.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And so it was just the 3 of us. And what was so special about this, right, is we're in this teepee and they have representatives from every continent in the world.
Yeah.
Of tribal
Bolivia,
leaders.
Ecuador, like Brazil,
Argentina.
I mean, and these guys are dressed with feathers to from head to toe and painted, like fully painted.
Yes.
It was intense.
In their tribal wear, and a few of them were the last chief, like of their entire
family.
Their tribe. Not tribe, right? The tribe.
Yeah, it's their tribe.
Of the tribe. Like, yes.
Cool.
So it was very, very spiritual.
Yeah.
It was very emotional. It was really neat.
Yeah. I mean, I could share a little bit about.
Yeah, so I do. If you're willing, I want you to share with everyone what happened to you that night.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, so that night it was crazy, but I'll say this, and I think that it actually, now that I look back on it, kind of ties together. But through my medicine journey, you know, I went into a lot of ancestral healing, which I had no idea what that was before I even like got there. And I couldn't figure out what was like going on. And I spent hours trying to just purge and get rid of whatever it was. And I didn't know what it was, to be honest. And going through that process, you know, once I finally released what was like this anger and hate and grossness that was burrowing inside of me, it took 4.5 hours of purging to try and get whatever it was out. And then once I did, I had this glorious experience where it's like my mom and dad, the other side of this too is I've lost both my mom and my dad. My mom died of breast cancer actually at 62, and my dad died 2.5 years ago from Alzheimer's and dementia. So
you've got like a history of
but it's really forced me to learn how to love myself because in that process I had to, like your parents, if you look at your parents, they are your people, right? That you go to for prize and recognition. They love you unconditionally. So when you don't have that anymore and it's stripped from you, you really have to learn how to love yourself. And that was part of like the journey to Peru, was that I didn't know what I was getting into, right? And so during that night, after I had purged and let go of all of the toxicity that I was carrying, this voice comes in and says, that wasn't yours to let go of. And I said, well, what was it? And then my father comes in and he's like, thank you for letting that go. And I was like, Dad? And like him and I hadn't seen him. So I have a very strong spiritual connection with my mother. We talk all the time. And like, even though she's gone and people are like, oh, that's crazy. No, I am just very spiritually connected. So I have the ability to just go in and connect, right? But I've always had this dialogue with my mom, and it really came through journaling. Like You know, you always think like that third voice that's in your head is like, where is that coming from?
Right.
You know, am I crazy? Am I talking to myself? Yeah. But no, and so I just allowed it in, and I journaled, and eventually I realized that it was my mom, and it was her essence that was coming through to me. So being in Peru and doing the journey and seeing my dad come in, I was actually upset with him because I hadn't had that connection with him. So seeing him come in, I was like, oh, thank God. And him and I sat and talked for hours. But right after I had released this toxicity, my mom came in too, and she tapped me on the shoulder and she turned me around. She said, Mandy, I need you to turn around and look out here. And I'm like, okay. So I turn around, I look, and for as far as the eyes can see, like miles and miles of people just cheering and like so happy and thanking me profusely for healing trauma for all of them for years. And so what I learned in that moment is that my purpose and my reason of here is to be that vessel for my family and to heal. So when I let all of that go, I was just like, I'm crying. I have my parents, my grandparents are coming in. Everyone is hugging me, but I've never experienced anything so amazing like that. And, you know, and now I'm more aware of the ancestral healing aspect of it. So when I hear people talk about it, my ears kind of perk up because it's like a thing now people keep talking about. It's like that childhood trauma, right? If you go back and you heal that. But what about the trauma that's embedded inside of you that doesn't even belong to you, that you don't even know is there? So that's really what plant medicine that night had done for me. And I felt after, like I remember we were walking down that street, for like 5 miles. I don't know whose idea that was. Like after an all-night excursion, we have paint down our face. And I'm like, oh yeah. And poor our other friends like back there, I'm like, are we leaving her? Because she's like way up the mountain. I'm like, I don't know what's happening here. Yeah,
with
she
all
was so
50 of her bags.
Pack and unpack. I'm like, all right, girl. I'm like, let's go. But that was
we were manifesting someone to come pick us up.
Anyway,
they eventually did.
But so the point though, and the way this all ties back to the original story, you know, at the end of the ceremony, you go around and they hand you like this, like, remember that stick? It was like this. It looked like a huge snake. It was like this giant. It was scary.
It was that. Yeah.
I'm like, I didn't want to hold it. I'm like,
guys, like a staff.
Yeah.
Or...
I barely was functioning.
I know.
Like, I don't remember.
I was like, not my
you and Janae slept the entire time. And you could, like, anyway. Yeah. So anyhow, but it was pretty interesting. So they come around and they have you share, like, your experience. And I shared. And then all of a sudden, like, it got to there was these 2 ladies that were sitting on the end with their daughter. And that was a lady that had, like, done medicine with her daughter, like when she was pregnant with her. So it was powerful, but she was probably in her 70s maybe. Yeah, older. And she didn't do any medicine, none, which was crazy. Yeah. And then there was another man on the other side of the room that was an elderly man. So she was from Bolivia. I think he was from Ecuador. And they're both coming at me in Spanish. And I'm like, and so the guy that was the translator said, just hold on, let them finish, and then I'll let you know what they said. So they
just listen. I'm going to cut you off. Because listen to this part, like how this is where the story, not that it hasn't been good, it gets really profound. Yeah. So like tune into this.
Yeah. So they bring me up and they're talking to me, and the lady said, had a vision of an Inca princess, and she's crying because she says the Inca princesses don't come through in this medicine very often. And she's like, so this Inca princess brings me to her. And she said she's like going like this, and she opened me up and performed surgery on me. But she said to her, I couldn't get everything. She's going to have to do some on her own. And I'm like, what the heck? You know, what's wrong with me? You know, but I had such a profound experience. I was still living in that cloud, but I was also in the back of my mind going, oh, it must be my hernia that I haven't taken care of, right? Anyway, the craziest part is then this man on the other side of the room stands up and he says, I had the same vision. And neither of these people did any medicine. They were sleeping. Yeah. And I'm like, okay, I need to pay attention to this. Yeah.
So they had a vision that they saw this Inca princess doing surgery
on me,
on Mandy, cutting her open and doing surgery on her.
Yeah.
They both saw the same thing.
Yeah.
From two different parts of the world.
Yeah.
Neither in medicine.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
Isn't
so
that,
carry on.
and that's, and I'm grateful that you were there and there was witnesses to this because it is one of those things where it's like a testimony, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, so after that, I came home and I was like, I need to figure out what's going on. So I'm like, I need to get my hernia repaired. So I went got my hernia repaired, did that. Fine. All of a sudden, like as soon as I got my hernia repaired, my boobs started like aching a lot more than normal.
Yeah.
But it was time for me to go to this doctor that I had the appointment with at the U. So he was like, okay, so I go to see him and I go to see him and he's like, okay, you know, you have quite a crazy history. And like we talked through everything and he told me all the options. It basically was like reconstruction if you had a mastectomy.
Yeah.
And, but he's like, before we do anything though, I really want you to go get a mammogram. And I'm like, okay. Because it had been a couple years since I had had one, which shame on me. Like I should have known better. So anyways, I go to get the mammogram and then I'm thinking it's like going to be a 45-minute appointment. I'm in there and it's 3.5 hours later.
Oh, geez.
And so they had found some calcifications and they were trying to figure out what it was. And they couldn't then, so I went home, then I went back and they did a biopsy on it. And the biopsy came back that I had breast cancer.
Oh, jeez.
And I was like, what?
Yeah.
But the interesting part about it was like, I said to myself, okay, I knew I was going to be fine. Like instantly had this wave over me. And then I remembered the experience in Peru. And it was like, in that moment, I'm thinking, okay, she just performed surgery on me. She, quite honestly, plant medicine saved my life because I was able to put more focus on it when I got home. But had she had not done that also, I don't know what she took out. And I don't know what I would have been dealing with had she not. So what happened was they found out that I had ductal carcinoma. And it was isolated in my milk ducts, but it was throughout my entire milk ducts. Okay. So they went in and performed. I opted to have a double mastectomy because of the history with my mom, you know. And
that was pretty quick after you found out.
Yeah, like super fast.
Because I remember when we went to lunch.
Yeah.
And your surgery was scheduled only a
couple weeks.
Right? You got in, you found out in 2 weeks you got a double mastectomy.
So I found out January 4th, which was 2 days to almost to the 9th year of my mom passing. She died January 2nd. And I was just, anyway, I was pretty dumbfounded, but then I also wasn't because I was like, okay, good. Like, let's get this all out of me. And my mindset was always like around once I get this out of me, I can finally actually heal. You know, like all the things are now healing. It was like this deepest purging that you could ever imagine. So I had the mastectomy. They checked 2 lymph nodes, no cancer, no radiation. Like they got everything. And literally my life was saved in that moment.
Because you caught it so quick.
So early and fast.
Amazing.
But what was interesting too is the same area that they had seen 4 years ago, because I had a mammogram 4 years ago, the same spot they saw again, and it was much, much like bigger area. So they think that last time that they had done the biopsy in California, that they had missed it. And so it had grown.
Which is very easy to do.
Because now they have this ability to go, they can see, you know, all of the calcifications that you have, and they can actually watch themselves go in and take parts of the calcifications. Where I think when I had it done in California, I don't think that they had the same technology at the time to where they could see themselves taking it out. So the doctors think that they just missed it.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to quickly touch on the importance of mindset. especially when it comes to something like this. Because prior to us recording, we were talking about how health is like the most important thing, when actually said it's actually our mindset. It's far more important than
mental health.
Yes, than physical health. Your mindset and mental health is more important. So tell us how that contributed to you getting through what you went through. Your mindset.
So I had done a lot of work on my mindset prior to this even happening. I would say I've been on a spiritual journey for 9 years, right? But what really, I did the yoga teacher training and I got certified to teach yoga. And it's almost been, I think it's a little over a year. But that really helped me to tune into my mindset, right? And meditation and continuing my journaling. I've written probably, I want to say about 30 journals, like full front to back. Yeah, in 9 years. The year that my mom died, I wrote 6. So it became that therapy for me. But also the mindset of, like, so often I think we get so caught up in our physical bodies and like what we look like, and we forget that the mental space is so important for us, because if we're not working on healing and quieting our minds, then our bodies are going to continue to suffer.
Agreed.
Right? And it's
and I believe you can't ever really achieve what you want in your body until you fix what's in your mind.
Exactly.
You will
they're
always
all linked. You have to be working on all of them.
Right.
Well, and to be honest, and it's going to sound a little crazy, but the subconscious is a part of our minds that store all of our trauma.
Oh, yes, of course.
And everything that people say to us, and all our parents told us who we are, right? But that's actually not even the essence of who we really are. So when we can get quiet enough, or we do, plant medicine journeys or different kinds of things that cause us to go inside of ourselves, it's like the deepest form of healing, because you don't even know who you are until you pull back all the layers of who you think you are.
Right.
Yeah.
It's so profound.
Because it's not your belief, it's what you know.
Yeah.
What you know is in here.
Right. And sometimes, and that's why I'm such a firm believer of plant-based medicine, because let's just say in our physical mortal state, we can't tap into that. Like, we're limited. So it's not until we can remove that, whether it's in deep meditation, breath work, yoga, journaling, plant-based medicine, that you can actually get into the core of your being and of your soul. It's hard to explain unless you've done it, right?
Yeah, but once you experience it, it's always available to you. Because you remember what it feels like, so you know when you're tapped in, right? But I would say 90% of the population walks around untapped and never knowing, and you think you know, but you really don't. And maybe you do, but it's, when you know, it's an unspoken thing, I would say. It's like everybody's is different, right?
Right.
But anyway, so that had really helped. All of the work that I had been doing up until this point really had helped my mindset. And also, like, going through everything I went through with my mom, I was her person for 6 years, and I watched her go through cancer, and I, was there at her chemo and all the things, and I watched it just destroy her. And I thought, my initial thought was, as tying it back to the ancestral healing in my family, is I was just finishing what she could not. I was getting rid of the rest of it. So that way, my children and their children, they don't have to continue to do my work. Yeah. Right? So.
Yeah, no, it's beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's, I've done some ancestral healing, right? And you don't call that upon yourself.
No, it calls you.
It calls you.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I did not call it upon myself what I had to go through for my ancestors. Yeah. I think maybe we're just like the strong enough ones to bear it, right?
Mm-hmm. That's exactly the truth.
So
yeah, it's like our I had a conversation actually with my aunt a couple of days ago, and I was like, I just feel like this is why I was here, to like help in that process of healing, and like became a guide for my family too. Yeah. Like that's, nobody teaches this. Mm-hmm. This is not something you can go read in a book. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'll tell you, I've read probably hundreds of self-help books, and not one of them talks about that. Yeah. But they do all point back to the same thing, which is healing the self. Mm-hmm. Yep. Every single one. Yeah. It's just the way you interpret it and the way that you read it. And that's why there's so many. Because you may resonate with one or a different one, but I'll tell you, there's nothing like when you go into the inner world of the self. Yeah. It's different. Yeah.
It is. Like there's a lot of talk, in our culture here in Utah too, about like that veil, right? That's placed over our eyes. I like to explain it as like that veil is gone. That veil is lifted. It is completely gone. And now you are 100% tapped in to like the quantum realm.
It's the biggest release of the ego because you have no way to be other than vulnerable. None.
Yeah. Nope.
Yeah. Nope. Like it is.
It will show you.
Exactly.
It's going to show you.
Right. Yeah. Right.
Do you have any like questions as someone who hasn't had any experience with like plant-based medicine? Like for the viewers, I'm sure like half have had experience, half haven't had experience with it or anything. Just from your perspective, what do you think?
Something you would continually do, or is it like a one-time thing?
Well, that's funny because I came home right after and I did it again within a month.
Yeah.
So, but now it's funny you asked that because I was on the way here and I was thinking, would I be ready to do it again? And instantly got that nauseous feeling in my stomach of like nerves,
Yeah. Well, there's many different types.
Right. But it's the answer to that is I don't know if I'm ready yet because that journey has taught me so much that I still think I'm unpacking everything that I learned.
Okay.
And so until I'm like, yes. And to be honest, I think the medicine calls you.
Yeah.
So when I'm ready,
you'll know.
The tap on the door will be there and I'll be like, oh, yep, time to go.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you think that different cultures do that in different ways? Because what you're describing could be, in my mind, very religious. Yeah. Like in different aspects. It seems like a very spiritual thing. And I think different cultures experience similar things in different ways.
Yeah. So I would say yes and no. Because if you look at it, if you're looking at it from a place of consciousness, right?
Yeah.
Where we are all connected anyways. So it doesn't matter what the spiritual aspect of it. And they're inviting me into their tent to do their tribe and their family's work. Yeah. Right. So they're inviting me in. And I think that's the thing that you're looking at, like with people is like, if they're inviting you to come into their space, it's not like a religion thing. They're welcoming me, right?
Yeah. I guess I mean just more the experience, like what you experienced, right?
Oh, yeah.
The actual experience.
Yeah, it was definitely very spiritual, but it wasn't religious.
Okay.
To me. It didn't feel religious. Did it feel religious to you?
No, I think I can kind of understand what you're saying. So
there's like the Native American culture where they smoke the peace pipe. So I'm just like, there's
like
all
the
these
different rituals in a sense.
Yeah.
Yes, so they do bring those in. Yeah.
So our experience in Peru, I would for sure say it was kind of
cultural.
A ritual.
I think it was
more a ritual.
Yeah.
Like prior to going into the journey, as well as once we got out, like passing the staff or something. That was very kind of ritual.
That's true.
You know what I mean? So I can see how
it seems like
in that moment, but like when you're doing it in the solace of like your own home alone, like that's like
you could make your own ritual, right?
very singular, very intentional, like independently from any religion or anything, right?
Yeah, I think you can adopt whatever behaviors serve you, right? It's like I came home with pounds of Florida water. I'm like, look, remember the water that they used to cleanse us? I brought home so much of that. Yeah. But it's water. Oh yeah. The water from these jar things. Anyway, so remember when they were pouring it into our hands and like you take it and you cleanse your body? So it's the agua florita. And so I brought home so I brought home some of that. And there were certain aspects of that called to me. So I brought those home. Yeah. But I would say I respected their ways of doing it because I'm so unfamiliar, you know? Yeah. So it was like
me too. Like I've never heard of
like you just go along with it and you do what you're comfortable with. I don't think it was
but it's still so individual.
Yeah.
But just like practices in other religion, when you go to worship, like that also is very individual, right? Yes.
And I'm using the religious term very loosely.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, sure.
There's spiritual, religious, and then there's different cultures.
Yeah. And the way they
and the way that they
practice
do
and
things
see
and their
and
beliefs. And,
yeah.
So
But I did feel like I was transplanted into like a different world for sure. I'm like,
maybe.
I mean, when we went and we spent the day with the indigenous people and they dressed us up in their clothes. That was so much fun. I've never laughed so hard in my life, but it was cool because it was so special to them, right? Like I love being able to be brought in. There's so many cultures out there that won't bring you into their environment because you have to be at a certain religious level or you have to be a certain person or a certain thing, right? Where they were just so welcoming and inviting.
And wanted to share it.
And the kindest people. And they literally have nothing. Yeah. Like they live with nothing and they're so happy.
I know.
I mean, literally my heart went home like full of all that love.
Yeah. I know.
Yeah.
I would love to live that way. I am planning when we sell our company to live that way.
Yes.
Yes. In Costa Rica.
In Costa Rica. Yeah.
On a little beach town doing nothing.
But having minimal.
Just minimal nothing. Yeah. Okay, don't get me wrong. I'll have homes all over that I'll fly to.
Yeah.
And live that same way all over.
We'll let our kids do all that kind of stuff and we'll just go where they are.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So did that answer your question?
Yeah.
Ish?
Yeah, it did.
Any other questions that people who don't know would want to know about plant-based medicine, you think?
Oh, we could go for a while.
I could say one last thing about it. I think, and this by no means am I a medical professional or am I anything that like would recommend anything, but I would say if you're struggling or if you're having a hard time connecting with yourself or going through a hard time, that this would really show you a path.
I 100% agree with that.
And it may not always be as enlightening and beautiful as I got to experience, because I can tell you the first time I did it, it wasn't like that, right? But it teaches you a lot about yourself. And I look at, to be honest, I have my kids are 24, 19, and 16, right? I have 3 boys. They're awesome. But if any of them were struggling with mental health or any issues, I would bring them to these people because it's so healing. Yeah. And it's safe, in my opinion. Yeah. So
that's cool.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sounds like an amazing experience.
Yeah.
It is. Yeah, it's helped me a lot.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, a lot.
Yeah.
So, well, thank you for sharing. Any last thoughts on mindset? Any last thoughts that you can, if you could give viewers one piece of advice, what would you say?
Let me think. That's a tough one because there's so many.
I know, right?
Don't be afraid, because the fear will isolate you. If you get diagnosed with an illness or something happens, it's like there is an answer and a reason for these things that are happening to you. But remember, it's not happening to you, it's happening for you. And that's the part where you have to step back from everyone else, because everyone gets twisted and upset and they're like, oh my God, you have cancer. Oh my God, all these things. If you can get to a place within yourself with contentment, knowing that you're going to be okay and that you're fine and you will get through it, that's a power.
Yeah.
It is a true power.
Yeah.
So that's my advice, is don't let the fear eat you up.
And our mind has more power than we realize.
It really does.
Yeah.
Our thoughts become our manifestations of what is, right?
Yep.
I don't know what I would have been like if I were thinking the other way. I have no idea. And to be honest, my mom, watching her, she had a lot of fear and she had a lot of trauma that she had not faced and dealt with.
Yep.
And it was manifesting out of her body.
Yep.
So that is another thing that became incredibly healing for me, is knowing that I had to know that I would be okay.
Yeah.
But it wasn't even, it was just a knowing. It was like this wash that came over me, right? It wasn't ever a thought that I wouldn't.
Yeah.
Right.
Wild.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And isn't it so true that a lot of times any symptoms we feel in our bodies, aches and pains, is just an energy that we haven't worked through and that we haven't released.
Yeah. Like we were talking about the fascia earlier, like your body, the fascia holds trauma.
Right. Our bodies for sure hold trauma.
Totally.
Right.
Yeah. Our bodies are just these vessels, right? They are messengers for healing.
Yep.
So when things go wrong in the body, it's probably trying to get your attention.
Yeah.
Right.
Hello.
So pay attention to it.
Yes.
If you have a knee pain, if you have a back pain, what is it that we're not working through?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And not to like short anybody that's going through anything, right? Like,
Of course.
like I get it. But also there is a deep seed that's in there that's speaking, that wants to be heard. And you have to get inside to uncover it, or the healing, you will die with your healing, like, and the next person will have to do it for you. It's like our children are the new improved generation of us.
Yeah.
Right. And so they're going to have to carry whatever weight we didn't carry.
Yep. I'm a firm believer. in
Yeah.
that.
So whatever I'm healing is good for them. Right.
Yep. Yeah, I love it.
Me too.
So profound. So before we wrap up, I do want to touch a little on your company and your jewelry, because I love crystals and I love the power of crystals.
Yeah.
So are you wearing any of your jewelry? Tell us
do
about
have
your
some
company.
bracelets on now.
And then you'll give like a little special offer.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
To the viewers. So tell us a little bit about that.
So the name of the company is soulvibesclothing.com, which quickly manifested in Soul Vibes Gems. But it is all up on soulvibesclothing.com. And I started making the jewelry, I want to say it was a couple of years now that I've been making it. And I got called to it because I was obsessed with gemstones.
Yeah.
Really obsessed with the gemstone jewelry. And so I started making bracelets. Then I started reading into all the healing properties of them. And then I really started researching like the really good ones. And so everything that you get from me is authentic and it's real and it's good. But also as I'll tell you all the healing properties and aspects of each of the gems and the things that I've created. And then there's some funny clothes on there with like funny sayings. And then I also have like the zodiac information and astrology. So I do astrology charts. My mom was an astrologer, so I adopted a lot of that from her, most of it. And some of it when I was a kid, I'm like, I don't want to do this. And then now where I'm at in my life, I've opened up the doors for that. So that is also on my site. So you can go and you can buy it for yourself, or you can gift it to someone or something.
I had my astrology chart done. It's fascinating.
It's fun.
Oh my gosh, I love it. It's fascinating. Have you?
And now I'm starting to get into the human design and the gene keys, and I'm like, okay, I can't, because this is like, I am so geeked out. I could spend like an entire like 2 days going over this information. But the astrology comes innate for me. I love it. So
very good.
It's fun.
Perfect. Yay. Well, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me
and sharing and being so vulnerable. Check out everything below. And once again, like, have a beautiful day, and thank you for tuning in.